What we see here, recreated by using electric lighting, is kind of a staged version of what Howard Carter saw when he became the first person after more than 3,000 years to look inside the antechamber of the tomb of Tutankhamun.
As archaeological discoverers go, the uncovering of Tutankhamun's tomb in 1922 is surely one of the most famous. The excavation's lead archaeologist, Howard Carter, kept a daily journal of his work, including the moment they made a small hole through the final sealed doorway and peered into the tomb itself.
It was some time before one could see. The hot air escaping caused the candle to flicker, but as soon as one's eyes became accustomed to the glimmer of light, the interior of the chamber gradually loomed before one, with its strange and wonderful medley of extraordinary and beautiful objects heaped upon one another.
It was photographer Harry Burton's job to record the excavation, and of all his hundreds of photos, one comes close to recapturing those magical initial moments. The Griffith Institute at the University of Oxford now care for the complete records of Tutankhamun's discovery and excavation.
After that first glimpse, it was very clear that better light conditions are needed for proper photography. So work was paused, and the next day, the mission's engineer, Arthur Callender, started the installation of an electric light system. Carter and Carnarvon had also quickly realized the extent of their discovery, and although they were quite good photographers, they were just not good enough, and there was an urgent need for the perfect photographic documentation of the find.
Around that time, Albert Lithgow, curator of Egyptian art at New York's Metropolitan Museum of Art, offered Carter any help he might need. So shortly after, two members of the Met team joined Carter and Carnarvon. One of those was Harry Burton. He'd worked with the Met Museum for more than 10 years and had become the best and most experienced photographer on archaeological excavations in Egypt. But let's take a closer look at our image in question. Burton's photograph number 9.
So here we look at the central part of the antechamber, and it's quite amazing. Carter describes it in his journal as it's like looking into the property room of an opera house of a vanished civilization.
It's such a romantic description, and you get in this shot something that looks so convincing as the first glimpse, but of course we can see from the shadows of the electric lights, it's very carefully staged. It's a month later. We can't see the cables, the lights, we can't see the Egyptian workmen, of course. Carter wrote them out quite carefully.
OK, so while the photograph is not quite telling the full story of what Carter initially saw, it's still a visual feast for the eyes.
What you do get is a sense of how cluttered it was, and with the ritual beds from the funeral, and the fantastic boxes containing food and joints of meat.
Like our Tupperware boxes, basically, and all of them very, very carefully labeled. That's quite amazing. And in the background, you have these beautiful alabaster vessels, very ornamental for ointments, decorated with elements of plants like papyrus, lilies, and lotus. And then some of the furniture, the stools, are quite amazing as well.
And still the bouquets of flowers lying on top of the boxes. It must have been a rushed closing of the tomb, because those boxes really shouldn't be there. They probably put in because it was the last bit of equipment still needed. It's a fantastic photo.
If only the walls could talk, but in some ways they do. Like many of Burton's photographs, taken over the decade-long excavation, there are clues in this image that speak volumes to Egyptologists.
I think the photograph shows how almost carelessly some stuff is piled up. And it must have been quite a rushed burial. The king died young, and so I think they were trying to cram in all the appropriate equipment.
Yes, it's just amazing because that was the first royal tomb from ancient Egypt, discovered more or less intact. Most of the other tombs had been already robbed in antiquity, and so that just expanded our knowledge about royal burial so much.
And such a range of golden thrones, sarcophagi, linen, underwear, food. It's such a range of material, and such a nightmare for Carter to conserve and to record, and thank heavens it was done so successfully.
Yeah, and just thinking about that, it's more than 5,000 objects in these 4 small rooms. That's Tutankhamun, someone who was a rather obscure king, reigning only for about 10 years. So what would the tombs for, let's say, Ramses II or Moses III would have looked like? I'm wondering.
Probably tidier. They probably had
much
more
tidier,
time
much
to do
bigger,
it, yes.
But we will never know.